Welcome to WUSA 9 Plus Election Special. I'm Larry Miller. Elections are right around the corner, and we wanted to keep you and your family informed. And that's why I'm here to break down what's on your ballot before you head to the polls. We begin here in the district. A measure called Initiative 83 could impact the way D.C. voters cast their ballots in the primary elections moving forward. While some believe that this will encourage more people to vote, others believe it will discourage voters, resulting in lower voter turnout. Our Jess Arnold has everything you need to know.
You've probably seen these signs around D.C. telling you to vote yes or vote no to Initiative 83, but we want to make sure you know what that means. It's a two-parter. One, it opens up the primaries to independent voters, and two, it implements ranked choice voting.
I'm going to vote yes on it.
And I feel like I definitely need to do more research.
Yeah. There are people like me. We vote on policy, period.
That's why Lisa Rice proposed Initiative 83.
Our little symbol is the double cherry, one for each part of the initiative.
After voting Democratic most of her life, 7 years ago, she joined the district's 76,000 independents who comprise about 17% of D.C.'s registered voters.
What we want to do is be involved in the election that matters to all of us.
If the question passes, it would make primaries semi-open in the city. Independents would choose which party ballot they want to receive and then vote in that party's primary.
If taxpayers are paying for it, then let us vote in it.
For ranked choice, voters can rank their top 5 candidates. If no one wins by more than 50% of the votes after the first choices are counted, the candidate with the least number is eliminated, in this case, Costia. Then the people who put Costia as their number 1, for example, get their second choice votes added to each remaining candidate's total. And the percentages are calculated again, and so on.
Wouldn't it be great for them to go into that office with over 50% support? I think that it's a win-win.
Rice points to last June's Democratic primary for the Ward 7 council seat. There were 10 candidates on the ballot, and the winner got just under 24% of the votes. There is staunch opposition on both parts of the ballot measure.
They both see this one.
Stuart Anderson represents the Ward 8 Democrats.
I'm personally categorically against it because it prolongs the voting process.
He thinks ranked choice voting could confuse voters.
Less than 50% of the voting population is voting. Yeah. We should be spending money on trying to figure out how do we get these people to the polls as opposed to trying to create systems that make it more cumbersome for those who are already coming to the polls.
What do you say to those 76,000 independent voters who do want to have a say in their council member, et cetera?
The primary is designed for the leadership come together and decide, do we want to support this person? It's for the party to say, not for independents or other individuals.
Voters will have their say on November 5th.
I don't think it's the best solution on either side, but I do think it's some manner of change, and I think the city could use some manner of change.
Before you put your ballot into a drop box, make sure you open it up and turn it to the back. That's where you're going to find the question on Initiative 83. For WUSA 9, I'm Jess Arnold.
While ranked choice voting would be a new way for voters to make their voices heard here in the district, it is not an uncommon method of voting. Cities like New York have been using it for the past few elections. Now, experts say they still need a few more election cycles to prove that ranked choice voting is in fact the way to go. Let's shoot down the Beltway to Maryland right now, where voters have some important questions to answer. Starting in Montgomery County, the topic of term limits is one of the questions listed on the ballot, specifically for one elected office. Marcella Robertson went to Montgomery County to get more information.
When you head to the polls in Montgomery County, you'll see question A on the bottom of your ballot. It asks if you are for or against reducing the county executive term limit from 3 consecutive terms to 2. Some say the current limit, or 12 years, is just too long.
You really need new, fresh ideas into government sooner than 12 years.
The Committee for Better Government is behind this push. The group secured the 10,000 signatures needed to get this question on the ballot.
The president has 2 terms, the governor has 2 terms, and the idea is that the executive branch typically is 2 terms.
Reardon Sullivan is the chairman of the group. The Republican lost against current county executive and Democrat Mark Elrich 2 years ago, but he insists this is not personal. Democratic leaders in the county disagree.
We have term limits. What's the reasoning behind taking it from 3 to 2? This is not about voters' rights. This is about something else.
They are urging voters to say no to the referendum, calling it a political stunt from Republicans.
You know, the next county executive that they're going to have, if they're unhappy with him, are they going or her, and are they going to term limit them to one term? And the question becomes is where's the cycle going to end?
This initiative would impact the current county executive. Elrich is 2 years into his second term. If the question passes, he won't be able to run for re-election in 2026.
This had nothing to do with the wisdom of term limits. This was a play by the Republican Party, which knows it couldn't beat me in a free and fair election. So the next best thing to do is to figure out how to make it so I can't run again.
That was Marcella Robertson reporting with that story. Montgomery County has 14 polling locations open now through October 31st for early voting. To find your local polling location for early voting and on November 5th, head over to our website. That's WSA9.com for more information. Well, another question for Maryland voters will see when they head to the polls is one related to the Maryland Constitution. Reproductive freedom is an amendment question listed on the ballot statewide. Our Simone D'Alba talked to some experts to break down what this means for women in Maryland.
For Maryland voters, Election Day will bring the chance to enshrine reproductive rights into the state constitution.
Thanks for voting.
The reason this matters is that if the right is protected in the state constitution, it becomes much harder to roll back those rights in the future.
Professor Jessica Waters with American University notes the ballot question itself does not include the word abortion.
Voters are considering the full realm of reproductive decision making. And I think that the wording of the ballot initiative is incredibly intentional.
While abortion rights are protected under Maryland state law, supporters of Question 1 say having it enshrined in the Constitution makes it more difficult to restrict abortion access if lawmakers try in the future.
Obviously, the question of abortion is front and center on many voters' minds across the country, but this amendment does more than that. And voters should know this could include things like contraception. It could include things like wanting to start a family using something like IVF. And it also includes potentially the decision to have an abortion. A vote against that would be a vote to say, no, I don't want these rights protected in the Constitution.
Some anti-abortion advocates are pushing to expand financial resources instead of expanding abortion access. Opponents of the question are asking Marylanders to reject the amendment, saying that it would, quote, cement Maryland's abortion laws, which are already some of the most extreme in the country. They argue that the wording of the amendment is vague and could undermine parental rights or even cover gender-affirming care.
On election night, get results from the elections here in the DMV, live coverage from all the major candidates' headquarters, and expert analysis. November 5th at 8, only on WUSA 9+.
Welcome back. In Virginia, some high school students want to make it easier for young people to vote. Jess Arnold spoke with some seniors at Fairfax County who put together a bill that you'll see listed on your ballot.
These students have been working hard the past year, changing from their sweats into business suits in their school bathroom before making their way up here to Capitol Hill to meet with members of Congress. Now, they're advocating for the High School Voter Empowerment Act, and it would designate secondary schools as voter registration agencies so that eligible high schoolers could register to vote right at school. Now, here's why these Marshall High School seniors are pushing so hard to get this bill through Congress.
Voting is the cornerstone of democracy, and we've seen that when young people are encouraged and educated at an early age, then they will get involved later on in the civic process. I think that's super important because if young people really want to make a change in their community, as we've seen from the issues from, the climate crisis to health care to abortion rights, whatever we feel about an issue, we can't just make a lot of noise. We have to actually go out and vote.
Samad, who you just heard from, says this whole process started last year. He was looking at TikToks that were talking about voter empowerment and education. Then he did some of his own research on it and found this bill that had been abandoned that was trying to make it easier for eligible high schoolers to vote. So he and some of his classmates decided to rewrite the bill and try to approach members of Congress with it. They were also fueled by stats that say less than half of eligible young voters cast a ballot in the last presidential election. These students have also now created an official organization called the Center for Voters Initiative and Action, and together they have met with more than 250 congressional offices about this legislation.
I think one thing that really surprised me is how both Democrats and Republicans in Congress were able to work with us, because I think as a young person nowadays on social media, we see how the political environment is so extremely fragmented and polarized, when in real life, they're just normal people, you know, and they're willing to listen to us, they're willing to work together. I think that it's really special that our bill is bipartisan, that we're able to work with people from both sides.
These students have helped to introduce this bipartisan legislation, and now they're just waiting for it to get through committee. So they say they plan to reintroduce it next year. From Capitol Hill, Jess Arnold, WUSA 9.
A question voters can expect to see across the Commonwealth is a constitutional amendment change. The question appears on the ballot as surviving spouses tax exemption. Now, this proposal has been made to include spouses of soldiers killed in the line of duty in a statewide tax exemption. Now, currently, the law allows spouses of soldiers killed in action to receive the exemption. However, some deaths suffered by active duty military members may not be classified as killed in action in some cases. Now, in addition to presidential, Senate, and district races, voters in Maryland and Virginia will see bond questions on their ballots. What is a bond question? Well, it typically is a referenda that asks residents to approve or deny budgetary spending for projects within their county. In Arlington, residents will be asked to vote on 5 bond questions totaling $273 million. These projects range from schools to infrastructure and parks. Residents in Fairfax County, Fairfax City, Loudoun County, and Prince George's County can expect to see bond questions on their ballots. Still to come, we spoke with some of the candidates listed on your ballot to help you make an informed decision before heading to the polls. We touched on the topics that many of you at home are talking about. Stay tuned. Now that we've explained some of the questions you can expect to see on your ballot, let's turn now to the candidates. We've been inviting candidates to talk with us about the issues at home that you want addressed. Turning now to Maryland Senate race. This one has garnered nationwide attention. Democratic candidate Angela Alsobrooks is facing off against Republican candidate Larry Hogan. Democrats are fighting to keep their razor-thin majority in the Senate. Historically, Maryland has been a deep blue state, but with Hogan's hat in the race, this could threaten that. We spoke with the former governor and asked him how he plans to convince Marylanders to vote red.
The only reason I've decided to run because I'm so fed up with the divisive politics in Washington. As I just said, I'm willing to stand up to both parties, and I think what we desperately need in Washington are leaders who are willing to do that. My whole focus of my career has been on bringing people together, on trying to find middle ground where we can all stand together, on compromise. And if there's never been a time when we've needed that more in Washington. And with all due respect to my opponent, who, you know, I like her and respect her, she's going to be a rubber stamp for the partisan agenda. I've proven that I'm not that kind of a person, and I think having me down there, I believe I can be a uniter and somebody that can reach across the aisle and get things done. I'm the exact same guy they voted for twice and the exact same guy that was governor for 8 years.
We also invited Angela Alsobrooks to speak with us. We asked her how she felt about her opponent calling her a, quote, rubber stamp for the partisan agenda.
A rubber stamp. We know that Larry Hogan is a person also who said that he would not speculate about about voting to codify in federal law a woman's right to choose. The same person who vetoed important abortion care legislation in our state, and then, bless his heart, said he's now pro-choice. And so he has shifted over and over again. But we do know one thing: he will vote lockstep with this Republican caucus because he was invited into the race by Mitch McConnell and was endorsed by Donald Trump, who said he did so because they wanted to gain the majority in the Senate. And that's exactly what he would do: confirm their conservative Supreme Court justices. He would help them to impanel chairs of committees like Lindsey Graham over the Judiciary Committee. And he has a record that supports much of what his party supports. He is a Republican and will be voting with them.
Turning now to the Commonwealth's race for Senate, the incumbent Tim Kaine is running for re-election against Republican candidate Hung Kao. Abortion and reproductive freedom is a hot-button topic that has come up in every single debate. We asked Senator Kaine what role he believes Congress should play in abortion rights. He had this to say.
I have the only bipartisan bill in Congress that would codify Roe versus Wade as a national protection for everyone in this country. Access to abortion, but also access to contraception. This is a bill that I've introduced with Senators Collins and Murkowski, Republicans, Senator Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, Democrats, and it's the only bipartisan bill that would do this. We need a national protection for women to be able to make their own reproductive decisions about abortion, about contraception, and about in vitro fertilization. And that's what we need to do. Now, the good news is Virginia is the only state in the South that still essentially protects the rights of Roe versus Wade. But that could be overturned if Congress were to embrace an abortion ban, for example. So I'm also going to do everything I can to fight against proposals that are on the table that could ban or strictly limit abortion at the federal level.
We spoke with Senator Kane's opponent, Hung Kao, on reproductive rights. We wanted to know where he stood on access to IVF and contraception, and this was his response. Take a listen.
You know, I have 5 kids, and 3 of them were conceived through fertility treatments. And so I would never stand in any way the way of parents of wanting to expand their family. I mean, I benefited from it. My wife and I, did. We have 5 wonderful children, including an adopted child. So I would love for families to expand their kids. I mean, we need to be more family friendly in this country, pro-family. And also I would love for us to streamline and make adoption a little easier, because there's plenty of families out there that would love to bring in a loving child into their home.
The outcome of Virginia's 10th congressional district race will play a role in which party controls Congress. We spoke with the candidates running for the open seat, Republican candidate Mike Clancy and Democratic candidate Suha Subramaniam. Education is a big topic for residents of the 10th district. Parents have been calling for schools to allow them to be more involved and informed on what's going on day to day. Both candidates spoke about the issues they're currently facing within their respective school districts.
I've been at the front lines in Loudoun County on the education issue at the school board, fighting for our children's rights and protecting our children and fighting for parents' rights. And I think there's a number of issues there, and one is school transparency, parents' rights legislation. So there was a federal parents' rights legislation in Congress a year ago, and every Democrat voted against it. And this legislation would have required states who are receiving federal money to do what we're trying to, what Governor Youngkin's been trying to do at the state level, which is provide transparency on curriculum. Notify parents when there's going to be sexually explicit material in the school programs. Give parents the right to opt their child out when it doesn't align with their values and their religious beliefs.
Parents should have a very important role and a critical role in their kids' education. I've always supported, for instance, when we had an issue with bullying in schools, I supported a legislation and co-patron legislation to make sure parents knew as soon as their student was being bullied, that parents knew. And when there were overdoses in the schools and parents weren't notified, I supported legislation to make sure parents were notified when those overdoses were happening. And so, there's several measures we can do to make sure parents are involved throughout the process. And I want to make sure that's the key to student success is 1, the schools are great, and 2, that the parents have as much involvement as they want.
To watch the candidates' full interviews, look for it in the Watch carousel at the bottom of your screen. You'll find previous interviews and some that we did not include in this special. Well, thanks so much for watching us here on WC9 Plus for our election special. We hope the information we provided you ensures that you are better informed before you head to the polls. We'll see you later.